Welcome to the Firehouse, the show dedicated to the brave men and women who serve our
Hello,
community.
everybody, and welcome to the Firehouse on WRHU 88.7. I am your host, Chris Moses, and today, sitting with me in the Firehouse is none other. I'm telling y'all, this is a special guest, especially special to me because y'all know I am from Uniondale Brookside Company too. I have with me Mr. Donald Hayde. What is going on?
All right, Chris, glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming down. All right, so I know a lot about you. For all of my listeners, you know how we sit at the bar and they talk about all of the guys that you know built your firehouse and did all of that. These are one of those guys that was always talked about at my firehouse. So I know a lot about them, but I want you to kind of tell the listeners who you are, what companies you've been in, how long you've been in the fire service in a whole.
Okay, I grew up in Uniondale. My grandfather was a founding member of the Uniondale Fire Department back in 1924.
Okay.
His son, which was my father, he joined the fire department in 1940, and I came along on the scene in 1953. My father had just gone out as chief, and I was like a little firehouse brat. You know, used to tag along with my father to the firehouse, and I just always was enamored with the fire service, just the excitement, you know, the red trucks, the lights, and you know, I just knew I wanted to join the fire department, and if I could, you know, even get on as in New York City, make it as a paid career, and I was lucky enough to have that happen, and you know, never look back. I mean, since I joined the fire department in 1971 out here in Uniondale, and got appointed to New York City in 1977. And it's been a great ride. I mean, had some great experiences and met a lot of great people, both here in the volunteers in Uniondale and the city, who are my lifelong friends. And I'd highly recommend it to anybody, or even if you have a slight inkling that you might be interested in the fire service, come on down. It's a pretty welcoming group, and especially out here in Nassau County now, we are hurting for manpower. There just doesn't seem to be that sense of volunteerism that there was, you know, back in the 50s and 60s.
But we're that. Hopefully, this show will bring it back. Shows like this and what things that we do will bring it back. So, how many years in total in the fire service? Let's count both.
All right, so that'd be 53.
53 years in.
Yeah.
Did it go like this?
Yeah, I mean, one day, you know, you're looking, you're 18 years old, and all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you have gray hair and you're 70, you know, so it did go fast.
It went fast. So 53 years. Donnie, I know you got some stories. And do they call you Donald, Donnie? What does everyone call you?
Everything, like, and even some names we can't even put on the air probably. But yeah, they call me Don, Donald, Don. It all depends who's known me and what context, I guess.
Okay. So 53 years, I know you got some stories for me, and we're going to get into those. I know we're going to get into those. But let's start in the beginning, right? You said your grandfather, charter member of Brookside Company, of Uniondale Fire Department, because you didn't say Brookside, but wasn't Brookside the only firehouse at one time?
And I'm not really sure. I think Protection Company was the only company at the time. I think they were a hook and ladder company. And then again, I'm a little sketchy as far as the origins pre-1924, but I think in 1924 was when all the companies were formed and kind of amalgamated under, you know, one umbrella of the Uniondale Fire Department.
Okay. And then, you know, your grandfather was a part of that. So
yes.
one of those members that started that.
Yeah, he passed away in 1941. I never knew him, but, you know, just heard some stories and
he's up
pictures.
on that wall.
Yeah,
I've seen. He's up on our wall over there. All right. And now, then we have your father, right? And then he starts in Brookside as well, right? 1940, you said.
Yeah, 1940, he joined the fire department, went in the Marine Corps during the war, came back, went through the chairs as lieutenant, captain. He was chief from 50 to 53, and then, you know, just an active member. And then I guess it was in the late 80s, he ran for commissioner. I think he did 2 terms as fire commissioner.
Oh, so he was a commissioner too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you basically were born into this.
Yeah.
It was almost like,
yeah.
not that, of course, you had a choice, but you were almost born into this. So
Yeah.
as soon as you were born, you were at the Firehouse. You would just grew up around it. Now, back then, did they have a juniors program, or you started when you were 18?
Yeah, I started when I was 18. I mean, if they had a juniors program, I would have definitely been involved in that. But you just kind of hung around the Firehouse and tried to be, seen and not heard. And you knew your place as a kid. I think it's a great thing that they have the junior program now that get kids involved at a young age, as opposed to when I did it was kind of a ad hoc thing. Luckily I was fortunate enough to have my father in the fire department, so I get to hang around the Firehouse. But other kids, if they didn't have a family member in the fire department, even if they had an interest in it, and they were under 18, there was really no outlet for them to get involved.
To get involved. So I gotta ask you, were you an active member and your father active member at the same time?
Yeah.
So
you
got on some calls with Dad.
Yeah, matter of fact, my first working fire, we were both on the truck together, and when you think you know what it's going to be like, and when you actually go into the fire and you see how different it is, and the mistakes you made. But I remember hearing him talking to my mother afterwards. He said, your son had his first fire today. He did all right. So like that was
that
kind
was
of a proud
wow,
moment. Yeah.
Wow. So I can imagine what that is. Even for your father to have his son right next to him as he's doing that. Do you remember the positions? Do you remember, was he your officer?
Yeah.
Were you on the knob? Were you?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an embarrassing story. We had a house fire on New Street, basement fire, daytime, and we were both on the back step, and we pulled the pre-connect, and again, being 18 and cocky, like I just stretched the line and, no SCBA on, and, opened the door and took about 6 steps down the cellar stairs and said, can't make it any further, not proud of it, but, dropped the line to run out to get a SCBA because, again,
what am I getting myself into? I know your father was looking at you like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He probably just let you do it. He's like, go ahead.
But once, we got SCBA on, it was a tough fire, but then we had a member of the company, Don Canham, I kind of looked upon as my mentor. He was a lieutenant in the city. He kind of, coached us on down there, and, we got down to the basement. We had a fair amount of fire and knocked it all down, but that was my first fire, and I'll certainly remember it. Remember the good part about it, and remember the mistakes, and don't go into the structure without your SCBA on.
Don't do that. And you said some key names. Don, isn't that Terrence's brother, right?
That was Terrence's father.
Terrence's father.
Yeah.
Terrence's father, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know Terrence,
Yeah.
T-Bone. That's who I know.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go through. You're 18. You now join. You're in. Where are you working? What are you doing? In your life at this moment.
Yeah, I was going.
You joined as soon as you were 18.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, I was going to college
Okay.
in Brooklyn at the time, and taking fire science. I had taken the test for the city. Like most 18-year-olds, didn't exactly have my head in the game scholastically. So after a year of college, I just said, I need a break. So I joined the Marine Corps. Went in the Marine Corps for 3 years, and then while I was in the Marine Corps, the city kind of went belly up, and they were laying firemen off, and I kind of thought like I'm never going to get hired. But when I got out in 1975, I went back to school and was working part-time, working full-time in the post office at night and going to school at night. And then in 1977, got called for New York City Fire Department. They had extended our list and got hired then. But as soon as I got out of the Marine Corps, I got back into the fire department out here. Got joined Brookside.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the first night home, I was sitting around with my parents talking, and a call came in, and I still wasn't even sure if I was off military leave yet. And I got down to the firehouse, and the captain was standing there. I said, can I ride? He goes, are you discharged? I said, yeah. He says, hop on.
Let's
so
go.
off we went.
Going. All right, so we're gonna go into some more stories of that, but I wanna go back to Uniondale and the start. And this is a surprise for our listeners. He doesn't know I'm gonna ask him this, but in our firehouse we have a plaque, and it says the A Team, and your name is on that. I already see your smiles. So I need to know, and this is, for my listeners, this is a diehard Brookside question, right? So my Brookside listeners that are listening right now, they want to know, what is the A Team and how do you become a part of it?
Well, the A team was at the time consisted of the guys who were most active. Again, like most fire companies, you have a whole myriad of age groups in it. And again, you don't expect a guy, 70 years old to be getting up, 2 o'clock in the morning from an automatic alarm someplace. But you do need guys to, get the apparatus out, and it has to respond. So we had a core group of guys, most of us young guys, immature somewhat, stupid. And then my father was part of it, this other older guy, Bill Overton. He always drove. And this guy, Mike Jost, God rest his soul, he just passed away. He was a New York City detective. He was part of the group. And, we were pretty active. And we had taken a photograph. Do you want to get into the photograph?
I want to get into it all. I'm telling you, because they all want to know.
All right. So we were at the Firehouse one night, hanging out, having a good time. And this fellow, Mike Jost, he was very into streaking at the time. So we wound up taking a photograph of just boots on, helmets, and that's it on the back step. And a photograph was taken from the back, and on the back of everybody's posterior was each guy had a letter written, he ran across the street, got his mother's lipstick, and it was written A on one guy, T on the other, until it was spelled out A team, and the photograph got posted in the meeting room of the Firehouse. And then to fast forward, my spinster aunt, God rest her soul, she belonged to the Ladies Auxiliary, very devout Irish Catholic. And when she saw that picture, she apparently freaked out, and suddenly the picture was missing. And we always suspected she did it, and we just recently found out that she, in fact, took it down. She was a little offended by it, and she'd even asked if that was me in the picture, and I vehemently denied it. And she goes, "Don't tell me that's not you." She goes, I pouted that behind a number of times. Right. So
I've seen it.
Yeah.
So there you go. So was that? I guess that was just fun. That wasn't an initiation to get.
No. It was just right. It was just a group of guys that we were probably the most active guys in the company at the time, and we took pride in it. And we just, I guess, the TV show. The A team was out then. Yep. So somebody, I don't even know who came up with the name, but we dubbed ourselves the A team. And again, we were just the most active guys in the company, and took some pride in that. But again, look back in retrospect, it was funny. Would I do it as a 70-year-old man now? No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I love that. So for my Brookside guys, I know that was one question. They were like, you gotta ask them. Him about that. All right. So we're talking 77, you started in getting, right? 77, am I correct? That's when you...
71, I joined 71, Brookside.
When you joined Brookside. Let's get into a little bit, before we get into some stories, equipment. What does equipment look like in 71 compared to, obviously, now?
Yeah, well, turnout gear was different. We just had the, 3/4 rubber boots, canvas coat, leather helmets, canvas gloves. And quite honestly, if I could go back to that, today I'd do it in a heartbeat, but that notwithstanding, turnout gear was different. The SCBAs were different. They weren't positive pressure. They were a little bit heavier. We didn't have thermal imaging cameras. The apparatus was a bit smaller. Mm-hmm. We also rode on the outside. We rode in jump seats or rode the back step. Now everybody's enclosed.
If you can explain that, because that's something that I know listeners have asked about before under comments, because someone had mentioned that. When you say you ride the back step, what does that mean?
Well, the back step of the pumper, we'd ride on the outside, and hang onto the handrail on the back. When you get right down to it, obviously it's a lot safer to ride inside. You're supposed to be seated and belted. And there were accidents in the past. I don't recall anything in Uniondale, but, guys have fallen off the back step. So they were doing that in Europe probably decades before we did it here in the States, moving guys to the inside. Okay. But, there was also there was a little more excitement and romanticism in riding the back step. I mean, right. You'd be out there and it'd be snowing and raining and wind blowing, and you're trying to put your coat on and hanging on with one hand. So I guess it was kind of like the old, Currier and Ives, American fireman type thing.
But now I've heard that people were getting dressed on the back step.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you got...
So you're flying down Uniondale Avenue, getting dressed on the back step.
Yeah. Again, maybe it was in retrospect, not the smartest thing, but at that time,
but of course, that's where
the apparatus was designed, and you're trying to get dressed so you're ready to go when you pull up to the scene.
I love it. All right, so let's go through some stories. What do you got for me? What stories do you remember? Let's start with a Uniondale story, even if it's a mutual aid, whatever. Any stories that you could remember?
For over 50 years, Fire News has been the preferred publication for fire, rescue, and EMS heroes. Fire News print edition reaches Long Island, 17 states, and the District of Columbia. Visit firenews.com to see the latest news, read their digital prints, or follow them on Facebook and Instagram pages. In print, online, on social media, Fire News has you covered. Visit firenews.com. And if you go ahead and go visit on Instagram, please leave a comment and tell them that WRHU 88.7 the Firehouse sent you.
I think, the story I told about my first fire, dropping the nozzle and, having to go out to get the SCBA. Not proud of that. But I guess having a fire off Uniondale Avenue, Billy Santa Maria and I crawled in and, I went one way, Billy went the other. He found a woman who was overcome and pulled her out and made a nice save. Just before I went into service, we had a nice house fire just up the block from me, and it was weird. One of the guys had gotten there in his car, and the fire was upstairs, and it was on the right side of the second floor. And as he's coming down, the left side of the second floor. As he's coming down, he was like, orienting himself as coming down the stairs, and we're coming up the stairs to the line, and he goes, go upstairs, it's to your right. We're groping around in his bedroom on the right, and it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then, finally, I ran out of air one time at the fire and went down to get a bottle change, and now I see it blowing out the roof on the left side of the house. And,
so
went
he
in
tells
there.
you the wrong thing.
Yeah, we popped a hole in the ceiling, and there it was. So, I mean, it just goes to show that, it's important to stay oriented on the fire ground and, give proper information. But again, this was, was not having a whole lot of time in the fire department and whatnot. So you do make mistakes.
Learning. You make mistakes. Yeah. We're humans, no matter what. We're humans. All right, so let's get into FDNY. So you're in. Well, no, you know what? Before we get to that, you're in Brookside. What makes you decide that you want to go into leadership? Right? Because you're a firefighter. What makes you say, you know what? I want to now be the boss of these knuckleheads.
It wasn't so much wanting to be the boss. Just I was always into training, and I always thought if you're gonna do something, especially the fire service, like be good at it. And I just thought that being a company officer, I was very into training, and I could make an impact that way. Not just again, I don't at that time I don't know that I had that great of a knowledge base, but we had a lot of well-informed people in the company, and kind of picking on their brains, and at least on Sunday mornings, like getting the guys out on the apparatus and stretching hose, flowing water, doing forcible entry, things like that. And again, trying to pick on guys' strong points.
Yeah, I understand. But now let me ask a question, because I have to ask this. I need to know. Were you a captain when your father was in the company?
Yes.
So were you his captain?
Yeah, I was.
How was that dynamic? Did he give you a hard time? Did he? And no, I know I'm not supposed to say this, so we're going to bleep that out, but did he?
No, I mean, there were times he'd give me some advice. He was kind of a laid-back guy. I'd pick his brain once in a while, and then I remember one night I'd been out with some friends, and, again, I guess overserved myself, and I was...
I like the way you put that.
I was home.
Overserved yourself.
And apparently I missed a call, mutual aid down in Roosevelt, some bar, matter of fact, I have a picture of it home, it was something lounge, and it was in the middle of winter, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and I pick it up, and I'm not feeling too good. It's about 6:30 in the morning, and it's my father on the other end, and very gruffly he says, "You a company officer or not?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "We're down here at Roosevelt, on a mutual aid." He says, "You better get your..." So I was like, all right, and drove down in the car, and by that time, I mean, it was pretty much in full bloom, and part of the building collapsed, so kind of after the point, but Yeah, I mean, I took my position as an officer pretty seriously, and so did he. And I think he wanted to see me succeed. And again, if you're out, partying, like, you got to know when to say, when to say when.
When to say when. All right, so let's get into now. You decide that you're going to join FDNY. You told the story of that. It finally comes through. People were being laid off before, and then you finally come through. You join FDNY, rising to the ranks. Why? Because there's some people that just say, I don't want to go that far. For you, is it because you like training? And what was the reason of going to how high you went?
Yeah.
Because you were battalion chief. That's all the way up there.
Well, it was just, I think it mattered just some self-esteem. You just figured if, you're going to spend 20, 30 years in a job, let me see if I can make some rank. And plus the firehouse I was in, a number of guys my age were studying, so it was almost like a group think. Everybody was studying. And then one of my lieutenants, great guy, Joe Curry, at the time I was still going to school to get my bachelor's degree. And he grabbed me one night. He said, "Are you going to study for the lieutenant's test?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I'm in the process of finishing up my bachelor's degree." I said, "Maybe I'll do it, for next test." And he sat me down and said, "Look," he said, "you can always go back to school anytime you want, because they only give lieutenant's tests every 4 years."
Wow.
So I thought about it, sat down with my wife. I said, maybe I'm going to I'll finish up this semester and I'll put a year and a half into studying for lieutenant and see how it goes. So I think that was a great move, and that was some of the best advice I ever got. I did well on the test, used my vets points, and got made in the first batch of lieutenants. And after that, everything kind of moved along.
And just kept going and kept going and kept going. So what is the dynamic like, especially let's say all the way at top, you're battalion chief, you've been working with, some guys that you've been working with for years now. What is that now, that dynamic of being, you're up here. I don't want to say they're down here, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they haven't moved up in rank yet. How is that dynamic with those guys?
Yeah. I think you have to understand that, like we say in the fire department, when you make rank of like battalion chief, it's you take a test for lieutenant, captain, battalion chief. Basically, you had 3 lucky Saturdays, and I always said, like, guys who, each battalion chief has an aide who drives them. And I had a number of guys who were my aides who I always said that, I felt they had as much right to be sitting on the right side of the car as I do. I mean, there's a lot of guys that, stay firemen for 20, 30 years, and that's fine, but they're a wealth of information. So it's all a personal decision you make. And of course, there's the monetary thing. Obviously, the higher up you're going rank, the more money you make. Maybe that's not true right now with overtime, but it was also somewhat monetarily driven to get a higher salary for the benefit of my family and whatnot. But I think you have to understand, regardless of what rank you are, don't forget where you came from. You're always a fireman, and you have to just like you're expecting to get respect as a lieutenant or captain or chief. I always try to respect the firemen for who they are and what they know.
Okay. All right. So let's fast forward a little bit. We leave Uniondale, and then how do we get into Baldwin? And what made you say, now I'm going to go over to Baldwin and give them really my services and all that I know?
When I got married, just before I got married, I bought a mother-daughter house in Elmont. And when my wife and I got married, we lived in Elmont for a couple of years. I was in the rescue company there, the first aid company. I was an EMT at the time. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then we didn't want to have a mother-daughter house anymore. We wanted just a private house. And through my brother, who was a priest at St. Christopher's of Baldwin at the time, he had heard of this house for sale, and we met with the people, agreed on purchase price and whatnot. And in 1983, we moved to Baldwin, and as soon as I moved into Baldwin, I joined the fire department there, and I've been there for like 40 years.
Wow, look at that, 40 years there. And you were ex-captain there as well, right?
Yeah, Truck Company 1.
Yeah. Truck Company 1, all right. So I got to ask this too. Brookside's an engine company. Baldwin, you go to truck. What made you switch? Was that what you wanted to do, or is that just what was there, closest firehouse? How did that work?
I was about midway between an engine company and headquarters where the truck company is. I was actually going to join the engine company, and then this fellow, Jimmy Bugler, who's a member of Baldwin Fire Department, he was the head instructor at the National Fire Academy at the time. He just said to me, he said, with your personality, he goes, I think you might be better off in the truck company, and I always worked in ladder companies in the city, so
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that much of a transition. So I joined Truck One out of headquarters in Baldwin, and yeah, I've been there ever since.
Been there ever since. All right. So where does FSA come in there? Because what makes you say now I'm going to go FSA? Are you still in FDNY when you do that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, in 1982, I guess they'd given an announcement for a test for instructor at the Fire Academy, and you know, from being in Uniondale and Elmont and whatnot, I'd always gone out to the fire school. I was always impressed by the caliber training out there in the burned buildings. So you know, I took the test and had the interview, and got hired, and you know, been out there for 41 years, and I enjoy it.
Wow.
I like the cadre of instructors out there. They're a good group of guys. Probably 3/4 of them you know, have city experience, either firefighters or officers or you know, battalion or deputy chiefs, and having been to a few fire academies around the country, I don't think there's anything that compares to Bethpage. It's all live burns. I mean, it's real fire. It's real smoke. It's not like a Simtron simulator with propane-fed fires and the fake smoke. It's the real deal. I mean, it's the real heat. If you can get through a fire out there, you know, you're probably going to do fine in a real fire back in town.
I love that. I love that. All right. Yeah. And we've had a couple guys, you know, we had the chief down here. We had Charlie Hendry down here. We had a couple people that came down, but you know, FSA is one of the best. One, not one, is the best, you know, that's how I feel. But let's keep going here. So I got a question for you. A common myth. I mean, you've been in 53 years. What is a common myth you'd want to debunk about firefighting right now?
I think there's a couple. Number one, I think people think it's just a simple matter of, you know, squirting water on something. It's not. I mean, you've been in fires. It's a lot of times you don't see any fire. I mean, it's getting inside a building. It's increasingly getting hotter. You know, you can't see because of heavy smoke. You have to find the seat of the fire. It may be, you know, 2 or 3 rooms deep into the building, and there's no flame showing it. So it's not just a matter of like opening the front door and squirting water. You actually, you know, I mean, we always say it sounds trite, you know, put the wet stuff on the red stuff. You have to find the flame, you know, to put the fire out. I think that's one of the myths. And the other myth is, you know, the firemen, a bunch of lazy guys just sitting around, you know, drinking beer. I mean, yeah, I mean, do we have a social aspect of it? Absolutely. But I think there's a lot the public doesn't know as far as the amount of training that's involved. That's right. And, you know, when you do get to a fire, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. It's time to like, and I don't mean to be misogynistic about it, it's time to, if I may use the term, man up and or woman up. And, you know, you have to go in there, and sometimes it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, you got to do your job.
Right.
You do your job. All right, so we play a game here. And I want to play this game with you first. Do you watch any of the firefighter 911 shows, really?
A little bit? Rarely. Used to watch Rescue Me once in a while.
Okay, so all right, so good. So we're going to talk about it. If you haven't watched it, then just say you haven't watched it, right? So what we're going to do, we play a game called the Flashover, okay? So first, Chief, what is a flashover?
Flashover is when the heat generated by the fire actually heats up everything in that particular area at the same time, and everything kind of ignites all at once, and the room kind of just bursts into flame.
In flames, just like that, really quick. And that is the premise of this game called the Flashover, is where I'll ask you something quick, like Android, Apple, you got to tell me which one you like better, all right?
Okay.
But we're going to do TV shows and movies, all right?
Okay.
All right, so if you didn't watch it, just say I didn't watch it. All right, so Chief Donald Hayde, are you ready for the Flashover?
Sure.
All right, here we go. We got Chicago Fire Rescue Me.
Rescue Me.
Rescue Me Third Watch.
Rescue Me.
Backdraft, Ladder 49.
Backdraft.
Backdraft? All right. Now, the most important question I am going to ask you today. Engine or truck?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to leave that one alone because you can't put the fire out by beating it with a pike pole or a Halligan tool. You need the water, but you need the guys to find the fire for you, and that's usually what the truck does. And they're searching for people, so it's it's a team effort.
So you're going to say engine and truck.
There you go.
All right. So we have, for the first time on this show, because everyone always gives me one. They give me either engine or truck. For the first time on this show, you going with both. Engine and truck. It's not either or.
No.
I love it. I love it. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All right. All right. So before we wrap up, I got a couple more questions. One question is, if there's someone that's listening like right now that is just got in, or thinking about joining, what type of advice would you want to give them?
Well, if they're in, they've already made the move and they've joined their fire department. I would say stay motivated, keep your mouth shut, your ears open, and if your department doesn't have an actual mentor program, just like people are looking at you as a probie, you start looking at the people that you serve with, the guys that are go-getters, the guys that seem to know their way around the fire ground, either informally kind of, buddy yourself up with them, or formally go up to them and say, hey, look, can you kind of take me under your wing and get me squared away here and teach me the right things to do and whatnot. To people who are thinking about it, I would say, go ahead. You don't want to be 80 years old sitting on your porch in a rocking chair, thinking like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that when I was 19, 20 years old. It doesn't cost anything to go down there, look around. You have to realize there is a certain amount of commitment, especially your first year and a half in the fire department. There's a lot of training that's required. But again, this is not busy training. This is training to make you an effective firefighter, and most importantly, to keep you alive on the fire ground.
That's right.
And don't forget, it's what you're doing is a very, very altruistic thing. There's not a lot of people that are giving of their time, freely to their community in something that's, somewhat dangerous like this. I'm not trying to be, melodramatic about it. I mean, most of the calls we go to are kind of routine, automatic alarms or gas leaks or brush fires, things like that. But every once in a while, you do get to a tough fire where you get in there, and it's like I said, it gets dicey. The more knowledge you have, the better off you're going to be on the fire ground. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Knowledge is power. That's a sound clip right there that we're going to use. Knowledge is power. Before we get out of here, I have to ask though, because people will kill me if I didn't ask. Do you have any stories from FDNY? Because how many, you said 53 years in total in fire service, but how many, I guess, in just FDNY?
Yeah, I mean, I think, not a zillion, but I mean, you've gone to thousands of fires, but I think, having been on during 9/11, I think 9/11 just kind of supersedes everything else. That was the granddaddy of them all. I mean, to see that much destruction and to have lost that many guys, I think that's the focal point. I mean, nothing pales everything else pales comparison to that as far as I'm concerned in my career. Yeah.
So in that, and we'll just touch a little bit on that. What rank are you during 9/11? Like, where are you? What's going on? What company you're in FDNY?
I was I was in purgatory, you might say. I just got promoted to battalion chief. Okay. And there were about 21 of us who got promoted, and they sent us all down to headquarters to do administrative jobs for a year. And at the time, I was just ready to cycle out. They had a mentoring program going on. Every week, I would go ride with either the 9th Battalion or the 7th Battalion in Manhattan. And, you'd ride with the chief, and, you'd ride up front. He'd kind of coach you along, but you were basically the chief. And you were supposed to do that, I think, a dozen times. And I had done it maybe 6 or 7 times when 9/11 happened. And after 9/11, basically the, playbook went out the window. So, I wasn't assigned any place. I was kind of just working down at the pile and whatnot. And then John Norman, who was the chief of special operations at the time, he'd asked me and a couple other chiefs who had been captains in squads, part of special operations, if we'd come back to special operations, because 4 out of the 5 chiefs got killed that day. Yeah. So, I spent my time there, and then on paper I was assigned to 3 Battalion in Crown Heights. And after a while, I just, asked John Norman, I said, I'm assigned to 3-8. Do you want me to stay here, or you're going to pick your own guys? And either way, to me, it's a win-win. The 3-8 Battalion was a great spotter. If you want me to stay, I'll stay. And he said, no, if you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate you staying, which I thought was a great honor coming from John. So I stayed in special operations ever since, with the rescue battalion ever since 9/11, and did my 18 years there.
So what is, for the people that don't know, special operations? Why does that differ from?
We're in charge of the 5 rescue companies and the 8 squad companies administratively, and plus our response matrix is we respond to second alarm fires or greater, or anything that requires the special units, man on the train, building collapse, scuba operations, high angle things, scaffold workers hanging off a scaffold on the side of a building.
Wow,
so any oddball stuff. So yeah.
Wow. Do you ever just look and just sit there and think about all that you've done, and just sit back and be like, wow, like
it's not what I've done. I mean, it's
Jobtown Graphics is your go-to for custom prints, t-shirts, patches, stickers, and more, turning your creative ideas into reality. Owned and operated by a firefighter, they bring dedication and precision to every project. Whatever you can imagine, they can produce. Visit them at Jobtown Graphics on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Drop a comment if you go on Instagram and tell them that WRHU 88.7 The Firehouse sent you.
I experienced a lot of stuff, but
okay.
I think the better statement would be, I sit back and I look and see what the guys in our command have done. I mean, the technical skill level of the guys in the squads and the rescues, and their firefighting ability was just great, as is as are most of the guys on the job. Like one of my old lieutenants used to say, you can't swing a dead cat on this job without hitting a good guy, and 99% of the guys are into the job, and when it's time to perform, they're there. They know their job.
All right, before I know I keep saying before we get out of here, because these questions keep rolling in my brain. I just want to know, battalion chief, what does a typical day look like? If you could walk us through a typical day as battalion chief, when do you start and how does that day go?
Yeah. Well, what I did as battalion chief special operations was a little bit different. Instead of 9 o'clock in the morning, we started our day at 7 o'clock. So you come into the firehouse, relieve the chief from the night before, see if anything was going on. If there were any incidents, just talk about them, get your gear on in the battalion car, have some coffee and whatnot. And then I'd usually go out and, you try to visit, maybe 3 or 4 companies that day. There was only one rescue battalion, so we had to cover all 5 boroughs.
Okay.
And, you might be saying, well, we're heading up to Rescue 3 in the Bronx. And you just, you pull up to Rescue 3 for a visit, and all of a sudden you get a run for a second alarm in Brooklyn, and, you're like a cat chasing your tail. So, you may have a day planned out, but, like they say, man plans and God laughs,
There you go.
But the bulk of the day was just going around trying to visit the companies. Maybe, if they were having a drill, you'd go there and observe the drill, or ask for a drill, and, basically just sit around, get a feel for the guys, what was going on. If you had any information to pass along, pass along to the guys, and just get a feel of how the morale is out there. Maybe talk about some past incidents that company was involved in. Things that went right, things that went wrong. Have a little critique.
A little bit. So, how does the ranking go? Let's say you said that you're here, you get a second alarm in Brooklyn, right? Mm-hmm. You now show up. Are you running this scene?
No.
So how does this work? When you show up now, who's running the scene, and where does that happen?
Yeah, it's the first dude battalion chief is the initial incident commander until it expands, and as a rescue battalion chief, it was kind of up to by the time we got there, if it was a second alarm, there'd probably be a deputy chief, and it was basically his call. He could say to you, well, I've got rescue squad working here. You go supervise them. Or he could say, I need you on the floor above sector, and he could just make you, say you're going to be the floor above chief, and you're basically acting as a, just regular battalion chief. Okay. with a sector and, other line companies under your command at that particular time.
All right. So it I guess there is, I guess a kind of pecking order, but it's also one thing is the respect, right? It's always the respect that ties it together.
In a technical rescue thing, we all were trained as divers, and we went through the same training that the firefighters went through, high angle stuff, hanging off ropes and confined space. So a lot of times when you got to a scene, it was just basically maybe giving the incident commander, that battalion chief, a warm fuzzy. If we had a technical rescue, say, you just let him know, look, what the guys are doing is perfectly normal, or, setting up a dive job, or, saying we're not putting people in the water because the current is too strong, or we don't have a confirmed location of where the person went in, or if a person in fact went in, it was maybe just some drunk stone guy saying, I heard a splash, I think somebody's in the water. So you were basically there to lend a little technical expertise to the battalion chief and give him a certain comfort level that, yes, we can do this, or no, we can't do this, or we're not going to do this. Okay. But again, he had the final say, so you were there basically in an advisory capacity.
All right, so 2 more questions before you go. We're going to backtrack. We're going to go back to the movies because I didn't ask you this question. You picked Backdraft over Ladder 49, right? Now, Backdraft, what a lot of people say is it wasn't real, right? It wasn't real. These guys are in, boots and jackets. But that's actually what you wore.
Right.
So I guess for you it was real. Of course, what everyone says, you're not standing up in the fire and walking around like they did. But their actual attire was what you wore, what they were doing, right? So as all the people that are listening, they always talk about that, saying, "Oh, this is fake." It actually wasn't. For Donald, it wasn't. That's what he actually wore.
That era, that's what we had.
That's all you had. All right. So last question here: how has with all that you've done and all you've accomplished and seen and experienced, how has being a volunteer shaped your life? So how is that, being a volunteer? How has that shaped your life?
I think, the fact that, it is volunteer. I think we all have a certain responsibility, everybody to give something freely to your community, whether it's, you work in the community garden, planting flowers every spring. We're community, and everybody has their strong suits. I don't expect, 95-year-old grandmother to be jumping on a fire engine, just like, I'm 71 now. I'm certainly taking a back seat. I can't do what I did on the fire ground when I was 25 or 26. But I think everybody should have a sense of community and try to give back. And again, for young people out there, if they're looking for something that has a little pizzazz to it, some excitement, and plus there's a social aspect to it, I think joining the fire department is a great outlet. Like joining anything, you may feel a little bit like a fish out of water initially, but as I said, I've made lifelong friends in the volunteer fire service, and when you join, it's a natural thing. There's some people you're going to warm to, other people like, okay, they're nice enough to say hello, and we get along here. Maybe they're not going to be your fishing buddy or anything, but you are gonna make friends, and there is a certain amount of excitement. There is an adrenaline rush, that you get from joining the fire department.
Listen, thank you so much.
Okay, Chris.
Listen, thank you so much for coming down and, coming to the Firehouse and telling us everything. We definitely want to have you back here. Okay. I don't know if you're listening, but if you are listening, Artie, we want you down here too. Want to get both of you all together down here. That would be an amazing conversation. But before I get out of here, is there anything that I'm forgetting that you want to bring up?
No, just I think you're doing a great thing here. And I think anybody who's listening, if you have the least inkling about wanting to join the fire department, give it a shot. It doesn't cost anything to walk in the door on a Sunday morning. Introduce yourself, and people will show you around, and you come down a few Sundays, and if it's for you, great. If not, nothing ventured, nothing lost. So
I love it. All right. I hope you all enjoyed that. We just heard from Donald Hayde from the Baldwin Fire Department about his life as a firefighter. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. Please like, share, subscribe, do all of those things. I am your host, Chris Moses, and please tune in next week to another great conversation in the Firehouse.